contest there is no greater workload, absolutely none, that ExCo or the chair can evidence to back up this claim of why they should be paid more than other members. At the most profound level, it undermines the role of scrutiny that is crucial in our system. It also signals to members that even if you have the largest portfolio or largest number of boards or committees, or you simply apply the most effort, that this isn't something seen as a workload worthy of pay. And Mr. Speaker, as I have raised in this House on several occasions, there isn't enough accountability in our system to protect the people from politicians who simply do not wish to undertake their workload. And to be perfectly blunt, no protection to stop MLAs falling asleep in Executive Council meetings or in the chairing of meetings, or turning up without having read the papers. And I know this has happened. This further weakens the exposition's claim that there is a greater workload or responsibility attributed to these roles, because the workload is simply what you want it to be. And the public do not have a choice in the election of the executive in the same way that you do in other systems. And, that being said, we all read the papers and we all sit around at pre-executive council meetings and arm the ExCo members with what questions or comments they can make to papers as well. This workload dynamic is also potentially going to be impacted by remuneration differences between members. And I'd say that currently the dynamic that we have, even though it isn't perfect, assists representation better in executive council meetings through that collaboration.
What concerns me most is that we're being asked to make a potentially significant constitutional shift at the very end of this assembly with no proper policy work, no clarity on how it would function, and no debate with either members of the Legislative Assembly or the public. In fact, in every constitutional review going back decades, officials from outside have suggested changes along these lines. And every time councillors and MLAs of the day, those who knew the strengths of our system, carefully considered those ideas and rejected them. We need to carefully consider whether this is the right moment to start down that path, particularly without the benefit of proper consultation or analysis. And there's another point. This year's budget was framed around savings restraint and telling the public what they could not have. I supported the Remunerations Panel's recommendation for a general salary rise because pay had slipped 8 years behind inflation. And we need to attract the strongest candidates to stand. That was justified. But this proposal does nothing to address that issue. Instead, it risks creating division, adds bureaucracy, and consumes resources that should be directed at higher priorities. To do this now, after the message we sent in the budget, will send a very mixed message to the public.
I have absolutely no problem whatsoever with the increase in the salary of the next assembly, which clearly, as a retiring member for good, I'm not part thereof. It's only right. It brings up an assembly member's salary to round about the level of a teacher.
I do have a slight worry that the change as was proposed it hasn't been, I don't think, properly talked through, and if we are going to make changes, and if the next assembly wishes to, it should be a journey in which they take the public with them, in which they speak to the public about how they want to change it. Because if we are little bit by little bit nibbling away and wanting to change to perhaps a different political system here in the Falklands, let's be open and honest about it rather than trying to do it by increments.
I support the current version in the bill as has been presented, rather than the amendment to reflect the additional responsibility and accountability of members of Executive Council as members of government, as well as recognising the importance of the role of the chair, which I agree with colleagues needs some work in the next assembly. But the amendments as proposed in the bill were about putting in place a provision for the next assembly, and then ensuring that work then carries on when the new assembly is elected. So I support the bill as it stands.
And with this clause, I see a lot of risk, and as I've already outlined, there are also constitutional clashes with some of members' responsibilities, and I appreciate my honourable colleagues also reflecting upon this and seeing that there is risk and it needs to be worked through before something like this can be introduced.